October 14, 1943. High above northern Germany, near the industrial city of Schweinfurt, the sky was cold, thin, and pale under a sheet of gray autumn cloud. At nearly 25,000 feet, the temperature had fallen to almost 50 degrees below zero, and the air outside the aircraft was so thin that a man could lose consciousness within minutes without oxygen. Through that frozen sky, a vast formation of heavy bombers from the United States Army Air Forces pushed deeper into enemy territory on one of the most dangerous daylight missions of the Second World War. The aircraft flew in tight defensive formations, known as combat boxes, their wings nearly aligned, each bomber positioned so its machine guns could protect the others. Among them was the heavily armed B-17 Flying Fortress, built by Boeing, an aircraft that had already gained a reputation among American crews for extraordinary durability. The B-17 carried 13.50 caliber machine guns and a bomb load of several thousand pounds, and its fixed structure and self-sealing fuel tanks were designed to help it survive heavy combat. Many crews believed the aircraft could endure damage that would destroy any other bomber. But on this cold morning over Germany, that belief was about to be tested in a way few had imagined. The bombers belonged to the powerful 8th Air Force, the main American strategic bombing force operating from bases across eastern England. Their mission was simple in theory, but incredibly dangerous in practice. Fly hundreds of miles into the heart of Nazi Germany in broad daylight and destroy key industrial targets that kept the German war machine running. The target on this day was the city of Schweinfurt, a place that had become one of the most heavily defended industrial centers in Europe. Inside its large factory complexes, German workers produced precision ball bearings, small steel components that were essential for nearly every machine used in modern war. Tanks, aircraft engines, trucks, artillery pieces, and factory equipment all depended on these bearings to function properly. American planners believed that if the ball bearing plants at Schweinfurt could be destroyed, German industry would struggle to maintain production. But reaching the city meant flying deep into enemy territory, far beyond the safe range of Allied fighter escorts. Once the bombers crossed the European coast, they would be alone. As the bomber formation crossed into German airspace, the quiet sky began to change. Dark puffs of smoke suddenly appeared around the aircraft. Within seconds, the sky filled with violent black explosions. German anti-aircraft batteries had opened fire. These guns, many of them powerful 88mm cannons, fired shells designed to explode near enemy aircraft, scattering thousands of razor-sharp fragments of steel in every direction. To the bomber crews, the explosions looked like dark clouds suddenly forming around them, each one capable of tearing through metal wings, engines, or fuselages. The aircraft shook as fragments struck the aluminum skin. Some shells exploded so close that the entire bomber lurched violently in the air. Inside the aircraft, crew members tightened their grips on controls, instruments, and weapons, while the thunder of flak echoed through the thin metal walls. Yet the formation continued forward. Turning back without orders was not an option. At the same time, German radar stations had already detected the incoming formation and relayed warnings across the country. Fighter bases scrambled aircraft into the sky. Soon dark shapes began rising to meet the bombers. These were fighters of the Luftwaffe, Germany's air force, and many of its pilots were experienced veterans who had spent years developing tactics specifically designed to destroy American heavy bombers. Among the intercepting aircraft were the fast and agile Messerschmitt Bf 109 and the powerful Focke-Wulf FW-190, both armed with heavy cannons capable of tearing through a bomber's thin aluminum structure in seconds. German pilots often attacked head-on, flying directly toward the bomber formation and firing at the last possible moment before diving away. Others attacked from above or behind, where the bombers were most vulnerable. Some fighters carried large rockets designed to explode near the bomber formation and break it apart. Within minutes, the calm sky above Germany had transformed into a battlefield of roaring engines, flashing gunfire, and violent explosions. Inside each B-17, 10 American airmen worked together to keep the aircraft alive. In the cockpit, the pilot and co-pilot held the bomber steady despite turbulence from nearby explosions. The navigator studied maps and instruments, carefully tracking their position across Europe. The bombardier prepared the bomb sight that would guide thousands of pounds of explosives toward the target below. The radio operator listened for signals from other aircraft and command stations. Meanwhile, the gunners scanned the sky through small windows and rotating turrets, gripping heavy machine guns as they searched for approaching fighters. One of the most exposed crew members was the ball turret gunner, who sat inside a small rotating sphere beneath the aircraft. From this position, he could fire in almost every direction, protecting the bomber from attacks below. But the position was cramped and vulnerable. If the aircraft were badly damaged, escape could become extremely difficult. Suddenly, a shout echoed through one bomber, fighters approaching from the front. Within seconds, the German aircraft were closing fast. Machine guns opened fire. Bright lines of tracer ammunition streaked through the air in both directions. Cannon shells from the fighters slammed toward the formation, exploding against wings and fuselages. One B-17 nearby suddenly shuddered as a shell struck near its engine. Flames burst outward. The aircraft rolled away from the formation, trailing thick smoke. Other crews watched helplessly as it disappeared below the clouds. Maintaining formation was essential for survival, and leaving position to help another aircraft would expose everyone to greater danger. The battle continued as wave after wave of German fighters attacked the formation. American gunners fired thousands of rounds in defense, empty shell casings piling up across the metal floors of the bombers.
Despite the constant attacks, the formation continued towards its target. The distance to Schweinfurt slowly decreased, but the closer they came, the heavier the defenses became. German anti-aircraft batteries around the city began firing massive barrages of flak into the bomber formation. Hundreds of guns protected the industrial area below. The sky ahead turned black with explosions. Each burst sent fragments tearing through the air at incredible speeds. Inside the bombers, the noise was overwhelming. Metal rang as shrapnel punched holes through wings and fuselage panels. Some fragments struck control cables or fuel lines. Others smashed instruments or ripped through gun positions. Yet the pilots held their course, because the most dangerous part of the mission was about to begin. As the formation approached Schweinfurt, the bombers prepared for the bomb run. During this phase, the aircraft had to fly straight and level so the bombardiers could accurately aim their bombs. Maneuvering to avoid flak was no longer possible. The bombers became steady targets for anti-aircraft gunners below. Explosions surrounded the formation as it moved across the city. Bomb bay doors opened beneath the aircraft. The bombardiers leaned over their bomb sights, guiding the formation toward the factories below. Through the thin clouds, they could see the industrial buildings of Schweinfurt. And then the bombs began to fall. Thousands of pounds of explosives dropped from the aircraft, tumbling toward the ground far below. Moments later, enormous explosions erupted across the factory complexes, sending smoke and debris high into the air. But the mission was far from over. The bombers now had to escape Germany and return to England. During those few terrifying minutes over the target, one B-17 bomber had been struck again and again by flak and cannon fire. Explosions had torn through its fuselage, shredded sections of metal, and damaged its engines. When the crew looked around the aircraft, they could see daylight through dozens of jagged holes in the aluminum skin. Control surfaces were damaged, instruments shattered, and parts of the aircraft structure were bent or twisted. By any reasonable measure, the bomber should not have been able to remain in the air, yet somehow it continued flying. The pilot held the controls steady while the crew checked for fires and additional damage. Against all expectations, the battered aircraft remained in formation long enough to release its bombs before turning west toward England. By the time the mission was over and the aircraft finally landed safely back at its base, ground crews would count nearly 200 holes across its fuselage and wings, evidence of one of the most extraordinary survivals in the air war over Europe. Stories like these remind us that the air war of the Second World War was fought not only by machines, but by the courage and determination of the men who flew them. Every mission demanded endurance, discipline, and the willingness to face extreme danger thousands of feet above the ground. If you appreciate real stories of courage, sacrifice, and history, support the channel Steel and Sacrifice by liking the video and subscribing so more true stories of World War II can continue to be shared and remembered.